Welcome to the Renewable Heat Now Power Hour for February 2023. We are so delighted to see all of you. I just want to make a mention that if you are just joining us, we are putting our names, pronouns, where we're calling in from, or where we're signing in from, an organization, if you want to put who you're affiliated with, and a superpower that you have, because we all have excellent superpowers in this movement. Okay, so we go to the next slide. We're going to go through the agenda tonight. So we're going to talk about so we are all starting at the same place. We're just going to name, the campaign that we're working on. We're going to debrief the amazing lobby day that we did in Albany last month. We're going to talk about our 2023 legislative package, the timeline of where we are now, because we're in a different space than we were at the last Power Hour, and our strategy to get to our goals. And then we have a couple of really fun actions. We're going to do an email action, and then we'll set ourselves up for a Valentine's Day action. And then we're going to break out into our regional team. So you can meet your neighbors and it's going to be great. Next slide. So just a friendly reminder, our Kick Fossil Fuels Out of Buildings action was also in collaboration with other organizations like Gas Free NY. And we just want to make sure that we are one of those alliances that was at that amazing day in Albany. We are Renewable Heat Now. We are completely came together just to get fossil fuels out of buildings. We advocate for policies that will accelerate geothermal, which is either ground source or air source heat pumps. It is magical geothermal. Next slide, please. Just to back up also why we are focused on buildings, because they are in New York State the largest greenhouse gas emitters because of burning fossil fuels. So we want to make sure that we are focused to be the most effective goal-oriented movement to help climate change that's happening right now, and bring a sense of climate justice to our state and hopefully to the world, working with our partners. So climate justice, environment, we know that moving to renewable energy and cutting out extractive corporations from the equation will help us alleviate high cost of bills. It will help us stop seeing childhood asthma on the rise. The New York State has some of the highest cases of asthma in the whole nation. And also we want to see our labor force, our workers, our families working to build our new renewable economy. Next slide. So we had over 200 people on the $1 Million Staircase. It was an astronomical turnout for a lobby day in Albany. And our movement is just growing and getting more fierce and more powerful. And over 24 elected officials came to speak at the rally. Like, everybody wanted to be there. And that's all because of you and all the work that we've been doing. Next slide. Oh, okay. Wait. Sorry, go back. So on that day, we rallied on the stairs, like you saw, Brianna. We lobbied and we delivered postcards. So go to the next slide. We also traveled. We had 3 giant buses, a large van, 2 different train routes, and many cars that came to Albany from all across the state to come and rally and lobby with us. Next slide. We lobbied over 65 legislators together because we had such an amazing big team. In a few hours, we met with 65 legislators. And then after, we delivered hundreds of postcards to the governor's office. And those are postcards that we were all gathering signatures on over the summer at petitioning and tabling events. So thank you for doing that. And they went to the governor's office. Next slide. And we did a little bit of, like, what did people think, and some of the things like the text messages that I got from the team that I was working with on lobby day, and other people were just like, how are you feeling today? These are some really nice, people felt powerful and amazing after this day. So beyond sensational, incredible testament to the coalition. Great boxed lunches. It was really important that we fed people, kept people going, and the bus transportation was easy and everybody had a really good time. So thank you all for making that day amazing. Next slide. We're going to pass it over to Lisa Marshall from New Yorkers for Clean Power to take it away.
Thank you so much, Kim. It's so nice to see everybody tonight. We also know there was some, we wanted to give you guys a chance to give your feedback if you participated in Lobby Day or signed up for Lobby Day. We know it wasn't perfect, and we want to make sure that every time we plan an event, it's going to get better and better. So definitely take just this minute to pop your positive feedback, your things for improvement, or something you want us to know into the chat. I'll name a few things that didn't go well. A lot of you signed up to lobby remotely, and we weren't able to secure enough virtual meetings for y'all. Hopefully you'll be able to take part in the next round of lobbying that we're going to talk about today. Also, some folks that got there late, there were no lunches left, even though I think we ordered enough lunches, but I think maybe some of the Planned Parenthood people took our lunches when we were rallying on the staircase. And there were a few other things that could have gone more smoothly. So please take an opportunity to share your feedback with us, and we do want to hear from all of you. Okay, so moving on, where we had our great lobby day. It was really sort of the launch of this year's campaign. Thank you to everybody who signed up and participated, who recruited someone else, who drove, who helped a friend. It takes all of us. So after that, and I think it was literally just last week, although I can't remember anymore, the next thing that happened was Governor Hochul came out with her version of this year's budget. And you might or might not know this, but one way to pass legislation is to stick it in the budget and pass it. And the budget is what happens first in New York State. So our legislators meet from January till June. From January until the end of March, all they work on is the budget. They don't work on any other legislation. So a great way to get some stuff done early in the session is to stick it in the budget. And that was what our hope was for all of the bills in our bill package. And of course, the funding that we're asking for, because that really truly is a budget item. So when Governor Hochul released her budget, there were some good things in there that we were looking for. She did commit to phasing out fossil fuels in new buildings. And she committed some funding that we desperately need for improvements, energy improvements to low and moderate income households. But unfortunately, her budget delays the onset of an all-electric code until 2026, which is really too late and a lot later than the All-Electric Building Act that we are advocating for calls for. She didn't put in there any gap funding. That's funding that's needed because as we get our older buildings electrified, there's a lot of problems with some older buildings that need funding so that they can be electric ready, ready for a heat pump. You can't just stick a heat pump in some saggy, leaky old building and expect it to work for folks. So there's gap funding that we're asking for that is really needed. And really crucially, her budget, unlike last year, did not include important changes to the public service law. Right now, our public service law, that's the law that tells the utilities what they have to do, says that the utilities have to give us gas if we want it, basically. If we're near enough to a gas main, we all pay for the utilities to keep building out more gas distribution to more buildings. And we need to really stop that. And so the service law, the public service law has to be amended, and that's what the New York Heat Act does. And last year, Governor Hochul did put that into her budget. It didn't pass, but she put it in there, and this year she didn't. So that's a real problem. And so that's the good and the bad. And the ugly is really that, you know, Governor Hochul has made a commitment to 2 million all electric homes by 2030. This current budget doesn't meet that. It also falls short of what's called for in the Climate Act, which was finalized at the end of last year, our climate plan. And as a result, real people, especially those most vulnerable, continue to be exploited and harmed by the fossil fuel industry. And we just can't have that. That's why we're fighting this good fight. So next slide, please. So here's a little overview of our legislative package. And if someone could kindly pop the link to that into the chat for folks so that they have it and they can print it out at home or email it to people. It's basically 3 bills. 2 are the same as last year, except one has a different name, just so to keep you on your toes, and then some specific funding requests. I'll quickly go over them. The All Electric Building Act, that's requiring all new buildings to not have fossil fuel combustion anymore. And that most of you are familiar with. The New York Heat Act, that's the one I was just talking about that amends the Public Service Law and also directs the Public Service Commission to ensure affordability of people's electricity as they transition off of gas onto electric, make sure that they are, that especially our low-income friends and neighbors are not paying more than they can afford for their energy. And then we have the Energy Efficiency, Equity, and Jobs Act. We're gonna actually share an opportunity later for you to sign up for a virtual lobby day for that. That's next week. This is a bill that takes the money that's collected on our utility bills, that ratepayer money that provides grants for home weatherization and for heat pumps. And it's going to change what the money is allowed to be used for so that it can do some of that pre-electrification work that is needed, and also make sure that the money is directed first and foremost to the most vulnerable communities that need it the most. And then we've asked for some specific funding, one for a gap fund that does some of that pre-electrification work, but importantly, from budget money, from tax money, not from ratepayer money. It's a little complicated, but basically ratepayer money is a regressive tax and our income taxes are more progressive. So we'd like to see some more progressive, budget money going to that fund. We also want to provide some low and zero interest loans for folks to be able to afford energy improvements, and provide more support for the regional energy hubs. These are the community organizations that help families tap and homeowners and renters tap into these funds. People aren't generally able to access all these programs on their own. They often need support. All right, sorry that was lengthy. Let's go to the next slide. All right, so as I just mentioned, from January until the end of March is budget season. And here's a little bit of how that happens. So the governor has released her budget, and that just happened. And now the next thing that has to happen is the Assembly and the Senate, the 2 houses of the legislature, each are going to put out their own budgets. And then there's a very intense period of negotiation, sort of a 3-way negotiation between these 3 different budgets where they have to reconcile into one final budget. And so these are the chinks and the opportunities for our advocacy to take effect, right? Since we didn't get everything we wanted from the governor, now we need to put a lot of pressure on the legislature to put everything we need into their budgets and try to get it all passed into the final budget. So we're going to take actions tonight and in the next few weeks to pressure the members of the legislature, key members of the legislature, into helping us realize those goals and doing what we consider to be their job. All right, next slide. So who are our targets? There's a lot of people in the Assembly and quite a few in the Senate, and they are not all our targets. First of all, we don't bother targeting Republicans because they don't have the power in New York. Both the Assembly and the Senate are dominated by enough Democrats with a supermajority that they don't need any Republicans to vote for any of these bills in order to pass them. And the Republicans don't have say over the key committees, et cetera. So we have several different categories of targets that we are paying attention to. So there are leaders, our governor, Kathy Hochul, the Assembly leader, Carl Hastie, and Senate Majority Leader Andrea Stewart Cousins. They're the ones who ultimately decide, you know, what gets in and what's out. All right, next slide. So then we have our committee chairs, because before a bill gets voted on by the Assembly or the Senate, it has to pass through certain key committees. The ones we're most paying attention to are Energy, Environment, Housing, and Health. And so these committee chairs, some of these are new to their chair positions, are people that we really have to pay attention to. And as you can see here, Assembly Energy Chair Dee Dee Barrett and Assembly Environment Chair Deborah Glick. These are two of our really important targets, and they're brand new in their positions. So we're really carefully thinking about how to politely yet firmly bring our bills and our agenda to their attention so that these things will pass through their committees. Next. Okay, another very important influential group is the Minority Caucus, the Black, Puerto Rican, Hispanic, Asian Legislative Caucus. This is a picture of the Assembly side caucus, and we have a special strategy to this caucus puts together their own priorities and sends it to the leadership. So we are working to ask these members to put these important climate bills into their top priorities, so that when they send their priority budget letter to the leadership, which usually holds a lot of weight with the leadership's decision making, if we get in there, we're in good shape. So that's a very important group to lobby. Next slide. And finally, we're looking at Democrats, what are called marginal Democrats. It's not because they are marginal, it's because the districts they live in, they have only won by a very narrow margin. And so they tend to be fairly conservative in what they're going to say and do, especially in a public facing way. And as you can see, Energy Chair Dee Dee Barrett right here is one of those marginal district targets. So we're going to be working really thoughtfully on how to approach her. And in my neck of the woods over here, for example, Donna Lepardo, she's a really great, hardworking Assembly member. She's done a lot of good things. She really cares deeply about her district. And she absolutely will vote for our bills, but she is not going to publicly say so until they come before a floor vote. That's her position. And that's the type of sort of discussion we have to have with some of these marginal members. You know, will they quietly say they support it, even if they're not going to loudly say they support it? That type of thing. Okay, moving on. Okay, so I promised you that we are going to write some emails to these members. And we're going to take some time during this meeting to just go to our emails and draft emails. We can either send them tonight or we can send them tomorrow morning and draft them tonight. But I've put together some sample emails. I didn't put together one for every scenario, so I'm going to have to trust you guys. I know you're super smart and knowledgeable to be able to look at these emails and email and craft the appropriate email for your legislator. Oh, Andres already put the links in the chat. So there's a couple of documents, and it's a little complicated, but bear with me. So we have a way to look up your senator and assembly member. A lot of you already know who that is. There's the sample emails, and there's a legislative tracker. So you're going to look up your assembly member and your senator in the legislative tracker and see what they're already supporting, and then craft a appropriate email accordingly. Now, for those of you who live like me, where there's only Republicans, Okay. You don't bother writing to them. Instead, direct your email to Carl Hasty and Andrea Stewart Cousins, our leadership, because your Republican legislator doesn't care about these bills. And even if they did, they have no power to pass them. So we're going to ignore them for now. And we're going to write to the leadership if you don't live in a Democratic district. So if you are in those documents, take a look and you can sort of mix and match. There's a couple of things we're sharing with these emails. One is we've written a budget memo, thanks to Anshul Gupta, who drafted that, our wonderful fierce activist in Westchester. Thank you so much for that, Anshul. Everyone that we're writing to needs a copy of that budget memo. And then there, for assembly members, there is a Dear Colleague letter from Emily Gallagher. And there's a tracker where you can see if your person has already signed that Dear Colleague letter. If they have, then you don't need to ask them to, but if they haven't, you can ask them to. And if you're not sure, you can just ask them to sign it anyway. That's not going to do any harm. Okay, so this is a lot of resources. So I'm just gonna put myself on mute. I'm gonna go write an email too. And all of you write email. If you need help with this, just put your question in the chat. All right, so hopefully either you have finished or you have everything you need to finish. These emails are just one of many tactics, but it's good to just get it done when we're all working together, have a little work session. So thank you so much for your patience with that. And, you know, let us know if you hear back. You know, we have some bill sponsors of the All Electric Building Act who have not yet signed on to the Dear Colleague letter from Emily Gallagher. So they just need a little reminder. It also just helps them to hear from you and to know how much public support there is for this legislation. All right, great, Iris, thank you. All right, so now we're going to do something fun. And I'm turning this over to back over to Kim because she is in charge of all the fun.
Yes, I am in charge of all the fun. Okay, so we're also going to do something on Valentine's Day, which happens to be the day of a major environmental hearing in Albany. So we want to, where we're having a lot of folks from our organization speak, and a lot of the amazing allies that are engineers and scientists in the movement, medical doctors, and so it's the environmental conservation budget hearing. So we want to do something fun because not all of us are going to be sitting in Albany. We want to send Valentines to people through Twitter and Instagram. So if you have a Instagram or Twitter handle, and can you please type it into the chat? We will save that in the Renewable Heat Now treasure chest. And we're gonna come up with a really cool, like, Valentine sort of message about you know, the environment, like, you know, stuff that's going on at the hearing, stuff about our bills, about the budget asks that we have, but we'll make it like fun and pretty. And we would love to tag you so that you can then see that you're, you know, get a notification and then, you know, share it with your friends and your followers. So I'll just model it. So on IG, my personal one is Kim Fawcett, and on Twitter, I am also Kim Fawcett, but then I'm also Sane Energy on both Twitter and Instagram. So I'll just write that. Great, Andrea. Great, Laura. Rachel, you can probably go to Instagram.com and see if like your computer remembered you. That could be one way you could remember what your handle is. Celia, awesome. Iris, great. Oh yes, and on Twitter, there's only like a certain amount of characters you can put in your handle. So Renewable Heat Now is actually says Renewable Heat Now, but it doesn't have the E at the end of renewable. So that's how we sort of got away with it. So make sure you're following us, or we'll follow you first. Sweet baby Jesus. I love that. Go Max. So good. We're getting, oh my God, this is so great. We're getting like a really good crew, social media crew together for Valentine's Day. This is really exciting. Yeah, and just keep adding those as we go along in the, in the evening. Thank you, Heather, Sarah, Stuart. Yes, that's awesome. Okay. As you keep writing these in the chat, we will then, save that and make sure that we have that in our social media kit for Valentine's Day to make sure to tag you all. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Megan. And now we are going to get together with our amazing friends in our district. So I think, Lisa, you are leading the breakout groups, or are you doing the poll first?
Nope, the poll is afterwards. So just do come back. We're going to call you back in just for a very little time at the end, but most of the rest of this meeting, we're going to give you an opportunity to meet with the other advocates in your region and have a little planning meeting. And I'm going to put, again, another document into the chat, which is going to be a place for you guys to take notes on your little meeting, your mini meeting in this big meeting. So here's the link. So we're just going to ask you guys, a lot of you have met before, but if you have anybody new, just quickly, let them say hi and introduce themselves. And then we're going to ask you just to take a look at who the legislative targets. Well, we're going to ask you to set a time to meet sometime next week, if possible, and please invite me to that meeting. I'd love to join. You're going to take a look at the targets from your region, your legislative targets, and you're going to sort of start to think about who in your group can reach out to those legislators and request an in-district meeting for the week of February 20th or February 27th. And the reason we're asking for these in-district meetings is that's when all that horse trading around the budget is going to be happening. And we want our champions to be championing, and we want our fence sitters to get off the fence, and we want our reluctant folks to hear from us too, that this is such important legislation that they need to at least, if they're not going to be championing it, at least to not block it. So we're gonna now, if you know how to find breakout rooms, I'm gonna open up the breakout rooms, and they are by region. Here we go. So Andra's gonna put in the chat, there's this virtual lobby day that you can do from home in your pajamas for the Energy Efficiency, Equity, and Jobs Act, hosted by We Act for Social Justice and the Energy Democracy Alliance. And Andra, did you want to explain how that's going to work for folks? They don't have to be on Zoom the whole day of the 15th, right?
Exactly. So you should go to that link and register. It's from 10 o'clock to 4:30 on February 15th. but you can sign up for a 30-minute slot. And so you only have to be available for a half an hour if you want. It's really good, and you should sign up as soon as possible so they can slot you into a meeting. We ACT and the Energy Democracy Alliance are super good at doing these virtual lobby visits. So it really would be worth your time.
What would you be doing during that 30 minutes?
So
You'd be
there's
in a Zoom lobby meeting, Heather, with a legislator or their staff to show your support for that bill. And it would not necessarily be a legislator, it wouldn't be probably a legislator that represents you, would just be there to support. And that's one of the bills in our bill package. It's the new one that we added this year. It's a bill that really helps direct funding to those who need it the most and promote jobs in healthy buildings in low-income communities. So we think it's a really important thing to advocate for. Food and Water Watch was going to send me a sign up for their phone banking action where we will call people in key districts to ask them to call their legislators, but I didn't get the link for that. So we'll have to follow up with you in an email. Look for that coming out. And then finally, we hope that you enjoyed this Power Hour for February. If you were new to Renewable Heat Now, it might have been a little bit dizzying, but we hope you'll come back. And if you've been with us for a while, we appreciate you so much. This campaign keeps growing and getting better and stronger. And I really believe we're going to win some big things this year. So the link to sign up for the March Power Hour is in about to be in the chat. And do you need me to help with that? Anybody? There we go. Thank you so much, Andra. It's on March 9th. Please sign up. Please tell your friends. And we're already past time, so you're fine. So you're very free to go. Thank you so much for being here. But if you have questions about anything, some of us will stick around for a few more minutes, so we won't shut down the Zoom. We'll stop recording though. Thanks again. This is a strong and powerful, dynamic and diverse movement across the entire state. And because of that, we're definitely going to win. Thanks so much. Have a good night.